A coalition of 91 political parties under the aegis of Inter-Party Advisory Council advocated for the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to start conducting local government elections as part of reforms in the electoral process. Now, they argued that the conduct of local government elections by the state's Independent National Electoral Commission had remained a threat to democracy because the process had been allegedly hijacked by governors. Now, this is really a great idea. How workable is this? Well, Francis Chilaka, political analyst, is still here with me in the studio. He's going to be doing more of the answering of these questions. Now, when I was, at some point in my life, as my duty to the nation, I was an INEC worker.
Okay. Returning officer?
Yes. And I can tell you my experiences, but as a journalist, I'll leave it at that. But state elections, local government elections, local government autonomy, and all that the Constitution says about local government, and all the arguments that have been, there have also been recommendations from the last confab that was held under the Jonathan administration, which was thrown into the dustbin, also made recommendations for local government autonomy. And now, we know that nationwide, we could just maybe on one hand count how many states still do local government elections in earnest, but the rest of them have caretaker committees and hand-picked persons who a lot of people have complained are their goons. What they're asking now, and what I have explained already, how easy do you think INEC can make this work? Because constitutionally, they might not be able to do so, can they?
Well, if the Constitution stops INEC from doing so, INEC should go to the National Assembly for that portion of the Constitution to be amended. You know, I think was it in 1st of June or 1st of July that the federal government started disbursing funds directly to the local governments. And I asked one question. I think it was on this program, and I'm still going to ask that question. When you disburse funds to local government chairmen who are appointed as caretaker chairmen by the governors, how do you want them to function? So the system already is flawed. I had pleaded on different fora that when the government made the announcement that they were going to start paying directly to the local government, it was a wonderful thing. I praised the federal government for doing that. But I also said something then. I said, for this thing to work, the election into local government has to be removed from the states. Let it become a national issue. Let the National INEC Commission handle it. And let the election of the local government agree with the elections of the other persons.
But we also know that, I mean, it's pretty easy. I don't think it would be a difficult thing for INEC to go to the National Assembly and ask for this and that. But let's consider the document that's already on Mr. President's desk that has been gathering dust, which should have been accented to before the elections, and excuses were given. Okay, that done. We're now in the next level where you should have should be one of the things you do once you get into office. It's still there gathering dust. So you want to amend something that is yet to be accented to. I mean, I'm wondering if we're not expediting actions on what is already on Mr. President's table, why would the National Assembly spend man-hours trying to edit something that may not necessarily see the light of day?
Let them do their own job. They have an oversight, some function. Let them do it. I mean, throughout the 8th Assembly, where, the excuse was that the former Senate President was a problem.
Well, we have a new Senate President.
That's what I'm saying. So let them be the ones to say, Mr. President, this thing is still on your table. What I expect the 9th Assembly to do is to sit back and look at what the 8th Assembly did. And look at those ones that have not been passed into law, that are waiting for Mr. President's assent, and remind him. After all, right now we don't have ministers. And then I'm asking myself, how long is it going to take Mr. President again to announce his ministerial?
Well, he said that, Mr. President's responses are very interesting. He said that there's been too much pressure on him, but he would only appoint people he has a relationship with. So he's still looking for
It's not something that Mr. President should be saying to us as Nigerians at this point in time. We're on the next level. Mr. President shouldn't be telling us he's under a lot of pressure. Pressure from who?
Nigerians.
It is the same pressure that is making corruption become something that cannot be curbed in this country. It's the same pressure. Mr. President should close his eyes to a lot of things and deal decisively with issues. He has the power to do that.
Coming back to the issue of INEC conducting state elections, you said something about putting pressure on him to get that document signed. But INEC is a government agency.
What is the name of INEC? Independent.
Oh, yes, but they're just a handful of people. Whatever it is, the content of that document will have an effect on us Nigerians and the voters. So we have more interest in that document than INEC. Yes, they have a responsibility. But what are we doing? Where are the people who pushed for that document in the first place?
Well,
where are they now?
The 91 parties
have resumed.
Don't forget
what is the excuse?
The 91 political parties are made up of you and I. So now the people
I don't belong to any political
It doesn't
party.
matter, but you're supposed to. But now through the political parties, the people are speaking. So if the federal government is being sincere with curbing the excesses of the governors, take away the power to conduct local government elections from them. That if you follow through all the governors that just came in, you'll find out that first thing they all did was to dissolve the state independent electoral commissions, and then appointed and inaugurated their own persons. Which is why at the end of the day, when the elections are conducted, you will find out that the party that is in power in the state will win all the local government elections. Because already, it's something that has been done, that the answer has already been written. But if the national body of INEC is now responsible, they will come and do the election like they do the state governor's election, the assembly election, and the presidential election. What we should do is to have one timetable for elections in Nigeria. For instance, the governor of Imo State was there for 8 years, Richard Okorocha. Did he conduct an election? No.
Well, that's detailed to most other governors.
So every governor does what they want to do as far as the local government is concerned. Why? Because the local government funds is available for them.
Well, the funds, as we
And then they make one mistake. They forget that the people are closer to the local government than to the state and the federal. Mr. President should do everything humanly possible within the next 4 years and empower the autonomy of the local government. They are closer to the people.
But this is a process that might take a long time. It might not necessarily, except a magical thing happens, or a miracle, I'd rather say, happens within the 4 years that we are in. But I see this taking a long time to implement, because the state governors threatened the presidency at a point when this act of sending the monies directly to the local governments was even thought about in the first instance. So this might drag on for a long time.
But has the president not done that?
Well, yes, but you know,
has the president not done that?
But the question again is,
the president took a decision for the betterment of Nigerians, not for the betterment of the governors. The governors are accountable to us, the people. Nigerians must begin to ask for accountability from their governors.
And that's where I was coming to. I used to work with a man who used to say, take government to those who need government the most, and those are the people at the grassroots. But how are we also certain that these elections will not still be hijacked because the governors still wield a lot of power? Because before now, local government elections were about people who were able to connect with their communities, and so they decided those elections solely. But now we know how elections are run in the country. How are we certain that the same people will not find themselves?
For me, I would not want to put the whole problem first. No matter how bad it's going to be, it's still going to be better than the state independent.
How is it
electoral.
going to be better?
It's going to be better because
if those elections are still being able to be influenced by governors, how are we certain that their goons will still not?
The governors will, their power of influencing it will be minimal.
How so?
It will be. It will be, because at that point in time, the people too would stand their grounds. Why people don't really stand their grounds when it comes to local government elections is that, don't forget, the electoral officers are from the state governor. The policemen are from the state governor. The military men that probably will be deployed are from the...
That's dictated for every election.
You know, no, but if they are coming from the federal, it will give that election some form of credibility. We saw what happened in the last elections. We saw how some people, with all their might in the state, they still lost the elections. Now, tell me, if those elections in the states were conducted by state electoral commission, do you think that those governors will lose their states? They will not lose. It is not everybody in Nigeria that is corrupt. It is not everybody in Nigeria that can be bought over. That's the point I'm trying to make.
But with the level of docility, and I use the word docility loosely here, that we have when it comes to elections, and we saw the level of apathy, the departure or the disparity between the number of people who voted and the number of people who actually registered to vote. There is some form of resignation from the process. Do you think that people will be able to bounce back as soon as these elections are put back in place?
You have the National Orientation Agency.
Oh.
What have they been doing?
Yes, we do, but they work very closely to the election time.
What are they doing? This is the time to start to educate Nigerians on their rights, on their electoral rights. This is the time to start. Let people be educated. Voters' education should not be a month or 2 months to the election. Voters' registration should not be a month or two. It should be a continuum. I
have had members of the NOA on shows on this station at several times, and the number one excuse is that, you know, there has to be an allocation of sorts because it takes money to do some of these things, even the jingles and the PSAs that they put out on air. And so if they do not get those monies, they cannot really function. Can we blame them?
What happens to their budget?
I mean, I really don't know. Those are questions we asked, and we got all kinds of excuses. So really, how effective can these guys be? Yes, we put a lot of faith in them, but how far can they really go?
Don't forget that National Orientation Agency, I think, is under the Ministry of Information
and Culture. Yes, I think so.
Now, does the ministry not have budget for them? Is the ministry not expending its own budget?
Do we know what that budget is? If it's enough to do whatever it is?
Let them start. You see, I have never even heard
because
one...
Because the last time we had them here, they just kept trying to say, in a nutshell, that, you know, it's a money thing, and if there is no money or there's not enough money, they can only do what they can do.
You see, the National Orientation Agency should think out of the box. INEC has a budget. They have budget for voters' education.
And we saw how long it took for that budget to be approved.
No matter how long it took, but they have budget for voters' education. Let National Orientation Agency partner with them.
Okay.
National Orientation Agency should think out of the box, partner with state governors. People need to be educated. At this stage in our political life, we should be talking of teaching the Constitution, the Nigerian Constitution, when we have a real Constitution in schools. We should begin to teach a lot of things back in our schools. I'm happy that history has come back. I give kudos to Mr. President and his team for doing that. You know, that they have brought history back. But we need to go a bit much more. We need to begin to teach people morality. The problem is that all the morals are completely eroded in Nigeria. So we need to go back to the basics. And that basics is where? Local government.
Okay. Well, let's hope that something different will happen anytime soon, starting from our local government. But I don't know. I don't know why I don't have so much faith in this process happening or taking flight anytime soon.
No, but for me, like I said, when Mr. President said they were going to start paying money directly to local governments, state governors objected. And, you know, Nigerians came out to ask, why are you guys objecting? What is the problem? You have your own budget. You have your own source of revenue. So why are you objecting to this? So if we're saying today, we're saying we want the elections taken away from you. We want a neutral umpire to conduct this election. Why must the governors object to it?
But can we, as Nigerians, follow through to make sure that this happens? Even
Nigerians follow through for funds to be sent directly to local governments. Like I keep saying,
did you think that it was just because the presidency was resolute on doing that?
Let me tell you the truth. Let me tell you the truth. I've always said one thing. If Mr. President can spare time, do what I call reconciliation. Fence mending in Nigeria. Reconcile all the federating units. That is what a father should do. If he does that, and he brings out something and put it on the table, Nigerians will support it. Right now, Nigerians are divided along ethnic, religious lines. He needs to bridge that gap. So that whatever he has to say, the people will listen.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Francis Chilaka is a political analyst. He's been here with us all through the segment on the show. Thank you very much, Francis.
Welcome.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Well, we'll take a short break, and when we come back, I'll be giving you my take. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us.
The Nigerians in Diaspora Commission has tasked the South African government to unravel the mystery surrounding the death of a Nigerian, Elizabeth Ndubisi. The chairperson of the commission, Abike Dabiri Erewa, paid a visit to the South African High Commission in Abuja, urging the ambassador to prevail on the government of South Africa to reveal the truth surrounding her death. Mrs. Dabiri Erewa urged the commission to do all it can to get to the root of the matter, saying it is necessary in the interest of justice and fairness and to help the family of the deceased to bring closure to the incidents.
President Buhari has instructed that the life of every Nigerian matters to the government and people of Nigeria. And we're here to implore you to please ensure cooperation, to ensure that the mysterious circumstances of the death of the late Elizabeth will be unraveled. We know that personally, you've done so much in this matter, same with your Consul General and your mission here, working with our mission in South Africa, but we're here to appeal on behalf of the government and people of Nigeria and the family that for the sake of both countries, we need to know what happened to Madam Elizabeth. For the sake of the family, we need to get a closure to know how, why, when, and what happened to her. We know we've been dealing with issues of xenophobia in South Africa, and which, in fairness to the South African government, we have about 8 policemen that have been charged for cases allegedly involving maltreatment of Nigerians in South Africa. While we call on Nigerians to behave themselves wherever they are, we are here to demand justice, to demand fairness, and to demand that the pains of this family would perhaps be eased a little bit. We know we cannot bring her back, but we look unto you and appeal to you for your cooperation between the two governments to unravel the death, this unfortunate circumstance involving Ms. Elizabeth Oju Ndubisi.
The South African police services are working very closely with the staff and management of Emperor's Palace, the hotel in which Ms. Ndubisi Chuku untimely lost her life. A video footage has been obtained. It is being studied, and we are awaiting the authorities to give us an update. You will also appreciate that we are constrained at this point to speculate or to provide as much information as possible because the matter is still under investigation. I think lawyers would say the matter is still sub judice. So we wouldn't want to put the horse before the cart because we think this is a very sensitive case. We need to treat it with the greatest of respect. We are talking about the loss of human life, and our government is dealing with this matter with the greatest priorities. So we reaffirm our relationship with the government and the people of Nigeria, and we will not allow anything to come between us. We will not allow any distraction, but the more we improve on our dialogue, on our interaction, the more we will have chances of finding solutions to the challenges that face us.
Well, it's time for my take. 3 things. Firstly, in all of this, the hues and cries of Nigerians about the level of insecurity in Nigeria, we haven't really heard the president react the way we want him to. But well, finally, Mr. President has spoken, and guess what? He has said that those of us who are criticizing, or the likes of the former President Olusegun Obasanjo, former President Goodluck Jonathan, and the Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka, are being unpatriotic. They're politicizing the issue, they're isolating it. And I'm wondering, as a leader who is in a country where they have insecurity as an issue, where people are being killed on a daily basis, should this be the kind of response that we get from a president at this time? And we would call this a very critical time, because the issues have become so sensitive that we're walking on eggshells. Mr. President, should this be the kind of response that you give to your people at this time? I'm wondering. And all our leaders, and it's not just about Mr. President's handlers, his advisors, the vice presidents, the service chiefs, the people who walk around Mr. President. Is this the kind of response that a president of a country should be giving or issuing out to people who are feeling like they've been abandoned? Brothers and sisters are being killed, people are being slaughtered on a daily basis. There are lots of questions that need to be answered, and I want to leave the presidency with these questions. Think about it. If you really are leading a people and you want your people to live in peace and harmony, think of a favorable response. And moving away from that, a Nigerian was killed in cold blood in a hotel, and it's not just any random Nigerian. Someone who left this country for a conference, a boss of a parastatal in this country, is killed. And the language, the conversation that we're hearing, I like to borrow that word, the body language of the presidency and the Nigerian embassy is not as strong as we would want it to be. And of course, the issue is, being dragged. It makes me wonder how Nigeria is being perceived, in the Committee of Nations. Is this the body language that we're supposed to use? Are we not supposed to be demanding an answer as to why someone left here and went to their country and the person is killed, strangled? We need answers, Mr. President. And lastly, 91 political parties are asking that the state be removed from the conduct of local government elections, that INEC take over the situation. But everybody's wondering how this is going to happen. Recommendations are being made that INEC should go to the National Assembly and adjust and tweak the Electoral Act. But there is one sitting right on your table, Mr. President. Why hasn't it been assented to? Yes, before now you said the timing was too short. We're in the next level. Is this how the next level is going to move? Mr. President, we're waiting and we're watching. Do something and do it now. It's been Plus Politics. I am Maryann. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a nice day.